never thought that the gentle, soft-spoken voice on the other end of the line would change my life forever. My name is Bianca Harrington, and for as long as I can remember, I reasoned that blood ties mattered above all else. Families support each other, share joys and burdens, and above all, honor commitments. That conviction cracked the day I learned my sister Celeste had lied to claim my inheritance. It began on a late summer afternoon in my Westchester home. The leaves were just starting to flicker with the promise of fall, and I was hunched over a cluttered desk, sorting through invoices for my fledgling landscape design business. My phone rang, an unfamiliar number with a New York City area code. When I answered, a curt but professional voice introduced itself as Claudia Myers, accountant for the Harrington estate. My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard the name in years. My father's passing had been a blur of grief and legal formalities, but I'd expected a straightforward split with my sister, as outlined in the will. Ms. Harrington, the voice said, I need to speak with you about some discrepancies Celeste has reported. My heart hammered. Discrepancies? What do you mean? As Claudia explained, Celeste had submitted documents claiming the entire value of our shared trust fund, nearly $500,000, and had signed forms, atrociously forged, in my own handwriting. The money, earmarked for splitting equally between us, was gone. I remember the room spinning, the rustle of the papers in my hands, suddenly sounding like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Betrayal is a razor-sharp pain, more so when wielded by someone you love. I dropped everything and booked the first train to the city. The only sound in my apartment that evening was the hum of the refrigerator and the echo of my own racing thoughts. How could Celeste do this? We'd grown up sharing secret hideaways in the garden, conspiring over lemonade and dreams of our futures. I felt as though her lie had twisted a knife into the very foundation of my identity. The next morning, as the sun poured into the metal and glass lobby of Myers and Caldwell Accounting, I rehearsed what I would say. I would demand the truth. I would confront Celeste and reclaim what was mine. They ushered me into a tastefully decorated office, where Claudia sat behind a walnut desk, sliding a thick file toward me. Inside were copies of checks, transfer orders, and forged signatures stamped with my name. Everyone bore testimony to Celeste's deception. She made herself the sole beneficiary, Claudia said softly, flipping through the pages. I noticed anomalies in the handwriting, so I held the transfers. Before releasing funds, I wanted to confirm with you. Relief and outrage warred within me. The accountant's diligence had saved me, but his trust in Celeste had allowed her to nearly succeed. Why didn't you call me sooner? I demanded, my voice trembling. Claudia shook her head. I thought it might be a simple clerical error on her part, perhaps a misunderstanding. But then I saw the scale of it, and it didn't add up. With that, I walked out of the office with two things burning in my mind: fury at my sister's betrayal, and gratitude for the accountant's intervention. I would face Celeste that evening, armed with truth and unwavering resolve. She had believed she could outsmart everyone, but she had underestimated the people who still believed in fairness. And me. I spent the afternoon driving along tree-lined roads, rehearsing my confrontation. My hands clenched the steering wheel as my mind raced through every possible defense she might offer. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about excuses. It was about trust, integrity, and the blood that runs through our veins. And she had chosen to stain them both. That night, the door to her chic Manhattan loft swung open before I could even knock. She looked up from her papers, surprise blossoming into a false warmth. "Bree, what a surprise," she said, using the childhood nickname she knew I hated. "Cut the act, Celeste," I said, stepping inside without permission. "We need to talk now." Her eyes flicked to the envelope I held. Suddenly, the confident facade cracked, and fear flashed across her face. "Bia, I can explain." But I would not let her off the hook that easily. Whatever words she'd prepared dissolved in the tension between us. The silence was louder than any apology. We stood there, two sisters on opposite sides of a chasm forged by greed and lies. And I realized that tonight, I would decide whether to let the past bind me or to demand that justice be done. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from." If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow I have a special story for you. She opened her mouth, and the loft seemed to hold its breath. Celeste's lips parted, but the words that came out were smaller than I expected. A fragile admission that felt like a crumb of a broken promise. The glittering city lights beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows bore silent witness to the rupture unfolding between us. I didn't know what else to do, she whispered, her voice taut with desperation. Dad never spoke to me after Mother died. I felt abandoned, and then, when the opportunity came, I panicked. She looked down at her manicured nails, as though they, rather than her actions, carried the stain. I stood rooted to the spot, the envelope of forged documents heavy in my hand like a guilty stone. You panicked? I echoed hollowly. You stole my future because you felt lonely? Anger flared bright and hot beneath my skin. Celeste's eyes flicked up, pools of regret shining in the reflection of the cityscape. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I thought I could give you a cut later, pay you back, somehow make it right. She blinked, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. I thought I was protecting you, from Dad's mistakes, from losing everything. My chest tightened. I had heard that story before. The martyr complex, the savior narrative, her entire life. Celeste convinced herself she was the hero of every situation, even if it meant burning the world to ashes for the sake of her own twisted valiance. I pressed the envelope toward her. You call this protecting me? Forging my signature? Emptying my accounts? You lied. You stole. That's criminal, Celeste. The words landed like stones. She swallowed, jaw trembling. I know, I'm so sorry, I'll do anything to fix it. Please, Bianca, don't make me go to jail. Her plea wrapped around me like a thin wire of guilt, but I forced myself to stay grounded. The tension in the room pulsed, as if the city around us mirrored our turmoil. After a moment, I straightened my shoulders. This isn't just about the money. It's about trust. You broke it, and I need to know if you're ready to face the consequences. I turned, letting the silence fill the space between us. Her breath hitched. She opened her mouth again, but no words came. I left the envelope on a glass coffee table, folded, precise, and walked out of the loft. The door clicked shut behind me. Outside, the night air hit my face. I leaned against the building, heart still thrumming with adrenaline. I pulled out my phone and dialed Claudia. The line connected on the second ring. Ms. Harrington, Claudia answered wearily. I was about to call you back. I'll be there first thing in the morning, I said. Prepare the paperwork. I want every forged signature documented. And schedule a meeting with our attorney. We'll press criminal charges if necessary. She paused, then said, Understood. I'm sorry this happened to you. There was compassion in her tone that warmed me, steeling my resolve. When I hung up, I realized the streets were quiet, too quiet. The moment had passed, and I was left with only the weight of the decision ahead. Celeste was my sister, but she had crossed a line. Blood wasn't enough to absolve her. I spent the rest of the night drafting an email to our lawyer, outlining the situation. Each keystroke felt like hammer blows, forging the case that would either save my future or destroy the fragile remnants of our relationship. As dawn approached, I pressed send. Then I allowed myself a single moment of relief. I had acted. I had refused to be victims of my sister's fear. But this battle was just beginning. I woke before sunrise, heart still racing from the confrontation. The city outside my window had a muted hush, as if it too were catching its breath after last night's storm. Over the hum of the espresso machine, I tried to steady my thoughts. The legal wheels were in motion. Claudia was assembling evidence, and our attorney would soon draft charges. But between me and the courtroom lay a far more personal trial, deciding if Celeste was worth fighting for beyond the ledger. I slipped on my blazer and headed to my office. My landscape design firm had been growing fast. On paper, life was good. Yet, every call, every client meeting, felt hollow under the shadow of what my sister had done. The glossy sketches of gardens felt like fragile promises, easily trampled by betrayal. At my desk, an email from our attorney blinked in my inbox. The subject read, Next Steps, Harrington Trust Dispute. I clicked it open, scanning the bullet points. File a criminal complaint for forgery and fraud. Obtain temporary restraining order against Celeste, accessing any shared assets. Initiate mediation process to explore restitution agreement. Each line felt like a scalpel, carving a path to justice, but also severing the last tendrils of familial bond. I stared at the screen until the words blurred, then forced myself to reply. Proceed with all recommended actions. Schedule mediation hearing for October 5th. Please confirm. Quote. With that, I shut my laptop and headed out. The day demanded normalcy. Client presentations, site visits, vendor calls. But every time I looked at a flower bed plan, I saw the ledger instead. Columns of numbers. Each one a promise broken. By mid-afternoon, I found myself at a prestigious Manhattan estate, planning a Japanese Zen garden for a hedge fund manager. As I explained the concept of koi ponds and raked sand, my phone buzzed. A text from Claudia. Draft complaint delivered. Office is reviewing. Hang in there. I exhaled slowly. Her support anchored me. On the drive back to the office, I dialed my best friend, Marisol. Mar, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, I admitted as soon as she answered. Bia, you told me what she did. You're protecting yourself, she said firmly. Your sister crossed a line. You have to stand up. Her words buoyed me. I realized that this wasn't just a legal battle, it was a test of my own strength. I had always been the peacemaker, smoothing family rifts with kindness. But kindness without boundaries becomes complicit. I was ready to draw a line. That evening, I packed a small bag and took the train to my parents' country home in Connecticut. Away from the city's glare, I needed clarity. The house smelled of pine and old books. A sanctuary where my sister and I had once laughed over board games. Inside, I found a framed photograph, Celeste and me, arms around each other, beaming at a summer festival. I traced the glass with my fingertip, remembering the carefree bond we'd shared. But memories alone couldn't heal the wound she'd inflicted. I set the photo face down and settled into my father's leather armchair. Under the soft glow of the reading lamp, I drafted a message to Celeste. I've filed the complaint. We have a mediation hearing on October 5th. You will receive a copy of the complaint soon. I hope you take this opportunity to make amends. I hit send and felt a sharp pang, realizing how far we'd fallen. Then I powered off my phone and opened a journal. Words spilled onto the page. Anger, sorrow, determination. I wrote until the lamplight dimmed, until exhaustion claimed me. In my dreams, I walked a narrow path lined with mirrors. Each reflection showed a different version of me. Child, sister, entrepreneur. Only one face remained unchanged. The girl who refused to let betrayal define her. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of my parents' country retreat, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I brewed a strong pot of coffee and sat at the long oak table, the oak grain bearing the scars of countless family gatherings. It was there I'd learned to ride a bike with scraped knees and to navigate teenage heartbreak under the same roof. Now, it was the setting for a new chapter of reckonings. My phone buzzed, a reminder of the mediation hearing scheduled for October 5th, still weeks away. But I refused to wait passively while Celeste shaped her narrative and cut deals behind closed doors. I needed leverage, evidence beyond forged signatures. I needed to know how deep her deception ran. I opened my laptop and accessed our estate's digital records. The trust subaccounts held more than cash. They included stocks in my father's old engineering firm, property deeds, and a portfolio of rare art my mother had collected. Celeste had siphoned off funds, but what if she had moved assets around? I dove into transaction histories, following trails of transfers, shell companies, and shadow accounts. My breakfast sat untouched as I traced patterns. Small withdrawals to hotel chains in Miami, mysterious wire transfers to offshore locations, and charges on luxury brand sites. Each discovery felt like pulling loose threads from a tapestry, unraveling the picture of the sister I thought I knew. I compiled screenshots, dated logs, and journal entries into a secure folder, tagging each item meticulously. If this went to court, I would present a dossier of lies, not just a few bad checks. By midday, my fingers ached from scrolling, but clarity emerged. Celeste had planned this for months. She'd admired Dad's estate from afar, simmering with resentment at being overlooked in his will. The forged documents were the final stroke in a long portrait of envy. I leaned back and exhaled. I realized that while I was building a fortress of evidence, someone else might be striking back. I called Claudia. Claudia, I need you to flag any additional activity on Celeste's accounts and on any linked assets. If she moves a single dollar, I want alerts. On it, she replied. Consider it done. Encouraged, I booked the next train to NYC. I needed to be in town when things escalated. The city that once felt like the backdrop of my success now loomed as the arena of the ultimate confrontation. That evening, I set foot in the attorney's high-rise office. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline. Below, headlights streamed like ribbons. I followed the receptionist to the conference room, where my attorney, David Langton, stood with a dossier in hand. Bianca, good to see you, he said, offering a firm handshake. I've reviewed the complaint and your additional evidence. This is far more comprehensive than I anticipated. He tapped the folder. I recommend we serve Celeste with an amended complaint, including all the newly uncovered transactions. It'll strengthen our position in mediation, and, if necessary, in court. I nodded. Let's do it. And what about interim relief? Can we freeze her personal assets? David frowned slightly. Yes, but it requires a separate motion for a preliminary injunction. We can file today. It'll limit her ability to hide assets. I gave him the go-ahead. File it, and push for expedited hearing. Outside the office, I felt the weight of what I'd set in motion. Celeste would be blindsided again, but this time by the full force of my resolve. On the subway ride home, I reflected on how money had driven us to this brink. It was supposed to unite us, a legacy of our parents' love. Instead, it corrupted the one who was supposed to cherish it most. I pressed my palm against the glass door as the train lurched, as though bracing against the tremors of the battle ahead. That night, at my Westchester home, I drafted a letter to Celeste. No threats, only facts. Your assets are frozen pending court order. Expect the amended complaint within 48 hours. I still hope you choose restitution over ruin. Bianca. I signed it and set it aside, knowing it held more power than any letter bomb. Then I sat by the fireplace, the embers whispering of endings and beginnings. In the flickering glow, I saw the reflection of who I had become, a woman transformed by betrayal into a force to be reckoned with. If Celeste thought she could break me, she would soon learn that I was no longer the gentle sister who forgave too easily. I stepped off the train with a steady resolve, the city grid before me humming with possibility. The streets that once felt familiar now held the specter of my sister's betrayal, but I was no longer afraid. Each footstep toward my midtown apartment reminded me of the battlefield I had chosen. The morning light filtered through the sheer curtains as I poured coffee, my mind replaying the previous day's events. David had filed the preliminary injunction, freezing Celeste's assets and giving me the legal upper hand. Claudia's updates chimed in throughout the day, each ping a reminder of the fortress I was building from ledgers and affidavits. By afternoon, I found myself in the sleek conference room at Myers and Caldwell once more. Claudia met me at the door, her posture alert. Targets are frozen, alerts are active, and the amended complaint goes out today, she reported. I offered a grateful nod. She handed me a thick folder containing the document. The amended complaint was a formidable tapestry of evidence, forged signatures, illicit transfers, and a detailed timeline of Celeste's machinations. We reviewed it line by line. Chunk by chunk, we stitched together a narrative of deceit so precise that Celeste would have little room to maneuver. Her lawyers would circle back and forth on minor points, but the weight of the evidence was undeniable. This would be the crux of our mediation argument. That evening, I faced Celeste again, not in the glow of her loft, but in the cold fluorescent lighting of the mediation room. We sat at opposite ends of a long table, their mahogany surface reflecting our tense reflections. The mediator, an unflappable professional named Marianne Cole, called us to order. Ms. Harrington, she addressed us. We're here to resolve this dispute amicably if possible. Let's begin with statements from both sides. She turned to me. You first, please. I rose. The folder clutched in my hand. My sister betrayed my trust, I began, voice clear and unwavering. She forged my signature and attempted to hijack $500,000 of our shared inheritance. We're here to reach restitution for those actions. I laid a stack of exhibits on the table, each one a testament to Celeste's planning. Across from me, Celeste's pale, composed face wavered. She began a rehearsed defense, her voice cold with practiced regret. But each time she spoke, Marianne raised a hand, signaling for another document to be presented. And with each exhibit, Celeste's bravado crumbled. Halfway through the session, I felt my throat tighten. This had taken us a long time, longer than I ever wished. But here, in this room, I was reclaiming what was mine. Asterisk, this story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. Her confession came in the late afternoon light, a tearful admission of guilt and a plea to salvage whatever remained of our sisterhood. She offered to return every dollar with interest, to attend therapy, to never speak of it again. The room held its breath. I glanced at Marianne. We can draft a restitution agreement, the mediator suggested. But understand, Ms. Harrington, once signed, it's binding. I closed my eyes for a moment, thinking of the shattered trust and the road ahead. Then I nodded. Let's do it. We negotiated terms late into the night. Lump sum repayment, monthly installments, and mandatory counseling sessions. Each concession came with safeguards: escrow accounts, penalty clauses, and performance bonds. Celeste signed, her hand shaking. As we left the building, the city lights stretched overhead like stars. I exhaled, exhaustion and relief mingling in my chest. I had won restitution and reclaimed my future, but the cost had been steep. I returned home, the cold wind at my back, and unlocked the door. In the silence, I allowed myself a small victory smile. I had turned betrayal into empowerment. But I knew our story wasn't over. The battle had shifted from courtrooms to everyday life. I would rebuild my trust in tiny increments, and I hoped my sister would earn it back. Dawn broke like a promise, filtering through the curtains of my Manhattan apartment. I stirred awake with the weight of last night's settlement still settling in my mind. The restitution agreement was signed, but the emotional ledger between Celeste and me was far from balanced. I moved with purpose, starting the day with a run along the Hudson. The breeze carried the tang of salt and song of passing ferries, whispering of resilience and renewal. By mid-morning, I was at Greenleaf Studios, reviewing concepts for an urban rooftop garden I'd been commissioned to design. As I traced lines on the blueprint, I sensed that my creative well had shifted, no longer distracted by financial fear. I felt a renewed focus. Each plant became a symbol: lavender for healing, rosemary for remembrance, and oak saplings for strength. I heard my phone buzz. Claudia's name lit the screen. Good morning, I answered. I've arranged for the restitution funds to be placed in escrow, she said. And I noticed something odd. Celeste's therapist called with concerns she might be skipping sessions. Do you want me to follow up? I frowned. Yes. Make sure she sticks to the schedule. The counseling is part of our agreement. As I hung up, I realized that justice wasn't complete until Celeste faced her own demons. The legal system had enforced restitution, but her journey to integrity would require more than court orders. The rest of the afternoon blurred between client calls and site visits, yet under it all, I felt a quiet confidence growing. I was a woman who had stared down deception and emerged intact. That night, I kept thinking of the old family home in Westchester. I missed the smell of Mom's Sunday dinners and Dad's booming laugh. But I also recognized that home wasn't just a place. It was a story we wrote together. Celeste had torn out a chapter, but the narrative of our bond was far from finished. At 10 o'clock, I packed a bag and took the train north. The moon guided me through the quiet countryside, each station bringing me closer to the past and the promise of healing. When I arrived, the front porch light was on. I knocked softly, and Celeste's head peeked around the door. Tired eyes, hopeful expression. Hey, Bree, she said, her voice small. I stepped inside. The house smelled of wood polish and wildflowers, her attempt at reconciliation. I smiled, letting the tension ease. We sat in the living room, the old sofa between us a testament to years of sisterly talks. Celeste fidgeted with her hands. I haven't missed a single session, she said, her tone earnest. And the escrow's set up. I don't know how to tell you how sorry I am. I took her hand. Actions matter, see? I see you're trying, and that counts. But it'll take time. She nodded, tears glistening. I know, and I'll earn it. In that moment, I realized our story was shifting, no longer a tale of betrayal and restitution alone, but one of rebuilding trust, one small step at a time. As I stood to leave, Celeste's voice followed me. Thank you for not giving up on me. I paused on the porch and looked back. Next time, stay. We'll finish this together. With that, I boarded the train back to the city, heart lighter than it had been in months, ready to face whatever came next. The city's pulse beat strong beneath my feet as I stepped off the train, the hum of traffic, a reminder that life moved relentlessly forward. In my bag, I carried blueprints for a new project, a public plaza featuring drought-resistant landscaping to honor sustainability. And in my heart, I carried the fragile beginnings of reconciliation with Celeste. Morning light glimmered on the polished marble of the attorney's office as I arrived for a quick status check. David greeted me with a nod. The injunction is holding, and Celeste's compliance has been perfect so far. No red flags on her accounts. He slid a brief update across the desk. We've scheduled a follow-up mediation in 2 weeks to confirm restitution payments. I exhaled, grateful but cautious. Good, let's keep it that way. Leaving the office, I reminded myself that progress came in small victories. As an entrepreneur, I'd learned that gardens grew one seed at a time. Relationships were no different. The rest of the day was consumed by site visits and client presentations. Yet, between each meeting, my mind wandered back to the home in Westchester. I'd promised Celeste we'd finish rebuilding there, and soon I intended to make good on that promise. At dusk, I boarded the commuter train north, the rhythmic clack of wheels soothing my thoughts. When I arrived, the kitchen light was on. The familiar scent of cinnamon rolls drifted through the air. In the kitchen, Celeste was pulling fresh pastries from the oven. She offered me one, her hand hovering timidly. Thought you might need something sweet after a long day. I took a seat at the table. They smell amazing. She joined me, hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea. I spoke with Dad's old accountant today, she said. He said he'll provide additional context on some of Dad's intentions for the trust. Maybe there are ways to honor any philanthropic wishes he had, together. I paused, intrigued. Tell me more. Her eyes lit up. Our parents always talked about endowing a scholarship for students in environmental design. I think we could add that to the restitution, something that keeps the estate's legacy alive. A warmth spread through me. Despite everything, Celeste was tapping into the source of our shared values: stewardship of land, community, and family heritage. We spent the evening drafting a proposal for the scholarship, eligibility criteria, funding structure, and outreach strategies. Each idea wove threads of our parents' vision with our own expertise. As midnight approached, we reviewed the draft under the soft glow of the island light. Celeste stretched and let out a satisfied sigh. Working on something good together feels right. I smiled, feeling the weight of recent months ease. It does. Quote. When I left, she walked me to the door, her presence no longer edged with guilt, but with cautious hope. I boarded the train back to Manhattan, clutching the scholarship proposal. The wheels turned beneath me as I realized that the next chapter of our story would be one we wrote hand in hand. The scholarship proposal spilled from my laptop, filling the empty carriage with visions of future scholars flourishing in green spaces my parents once dreamed of. As the train lurched toward Manhattan, I envisioned plaques honoring our family name, a living testament to turning strife into opportunity. Back at my office, I met with Claudia to discuss next steps. She reviewed the proposal, eyebrows raised. This could strengthen your case in the follow-up mediation, she observed. Showing you're channeling restitution into something meaningful adds moral weight. She made notes on the margins. Her insight reminded me that justice was more than retribution. It was restoration. If money simply changed hands, the wounds would fester. But if that money grew into something that helped others, it would heal us all. Afternoon sunlight cut through my studio as I prepared for an on-site consultation with a historic preservation committee. The site was an abandoned railway depot, slated to become a community garden. I pitched ideas blending native flora with industrial relics, a tribute to renewal. The committee approved with enthusiasm, leaving me energized and reminded of my purpose. That evening, I caught the train northward again. The rhythm of the rails echoed my resolve. Forge forward, build new ground. I arrived late, and Celeste greeted me in the living room holding 2 steaming mugs. She led me to the sofa, where the glow of the fire danced across her face. I spoke with Attorney Langton today, she began. He thinks the scholarship is a great idea. He suggested we include a clause ensuring the program's longevity, maybe set up a board with rotating members from the design community. I nodded. Together we fleshed out governance structures, selection committees, and an endowment size that would sustain the scholarship in perpetuity. As midnight approached, I realized the novelty of working side by side with Celeste. Each idea was a stitch in a tapestry of redemption, and with every laugh and shared memory, a layer of trust was restored. Before I left, Celeste placed a hand on mine. Thank you for believing we could do this together. It means everything. Quote. I looked into her eyes, seeing sincerity free of artifice. We're not out of the woods, but we're planting new seeds. That's what matters. On the ride back, I drafted an email to David. We have a concrete scholarship plan. Please include this in our mediation materials as evidence of meaningful restitution. I sent it and felt the tension ease. In the silent tunnel, I allowed myself to hope. The path of resentment was narrow and dark, but the path of renewal had space to breathe. Autumn's chill whispered through the trees as I stepped off the train with the weight of our shared accomplishments in my bag. The scholarship plan was gaining traction, and the next mediation loomed with the promise of closure. But as I made my way to a client site, a sprawling botanical garden redesign, I sensed the horizon was strewn with both hope and uncertainty. The client meeting in the Glass Conservatory was a success. They loved my proposals integrating outdoor classrooms and drought-tolerant plantings. Yet every compliment reminded me that validation now came in multifaceted forms: professional acclaim, personal growth, and the fragile threads of family bonds being rewoven. Late afternoon brought a message from David. The follow-up mediation was scheduled for November 12th. My stomach fluttered. I had prepared meticulously, armed with evidence of restitution and the scholarship proposal. But mediation is a crucible. It tests not only facts but character. I grabbed my coat and headed to Westchester. Celeste was waiting in the kitchen, her expression unreadable. How are you feeling? I asked as I poured tea. She offered a thin smile, nervous, but ready. I added a clause about an advisory board, so that the scholarship's direction remains dynamic and relevant. She passed me a printed draft. Let me know if this works. We pored over the text, tweaking language, adjusting endowment figures, and clarifying governance provisions. The more we refined it, the more I realized this project transcended legal restitution. It was the first tangible legacy my sister and I would share on equal footing. Hours later, under the glow of the island light, Celeste confided, I've been reflecting on why I did this. It wasn't just resentment. I felt invisible, like Dad never saw my worth unless I accomplished something extraordinary. Her voice wavered. I thought seizing the money would force his recognition. A pang of sympathy struck me. We had both craved our father's approval in different ways. You didn't need to steal to prove yourself, I said gently. You're brilliant as you are, but it's not too late to be seen honestly. She nodded, tears glinting. I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. We'll do this together. The next morning I returned to Manhattan, confidence simmering beneath uncertainty. I reviewed closing arguments for mediation and rehearsed key points about restitution and scholarship impact. On November 12th, we arrived at the mediator's office, documents in hand. As Celeste and I sat side by side, I felt that our shared legacy was no longer a contested lawsuit, but a promise to our parents, to ourselves, and to every student who would benefit from our scholarship. Marianne called the session to order. We presented our joint plan, watched the mediator's eyes widen at our collaborative spirit. No longer adversaries, we were partners, channeling conflict into creation. When the gavel finally settled on the final agreement, Celeste and I exchanged a glance, victory laced with relief. I stood and addressed the room. This isn't the end of a dispute, but the beginning of a legacy. Thank you all." As we left, the cool November air embraced us. Celeste and I stepped onto the street, sisters not by decree of law, but by chosen commitment to each other's growth. A crisp winter dawn greeted me as I walked through Central Park, bundled in my tailored coat against the chill. The city was waking, a mosaic of simmering ambitions and delicate resolutions. I reflected on the journey so far, how betrayal had fractured me, and how rebuilding had tempered my endurance like steel forged in adversity. As I reached my office, my phone buzzed. A newspaper alert heralded the launch of our scholarship, complete with a statement of purpose quoted from our joint press release. I clicked the link, an online article celebrating the Harrington Family Environmental Design Scholarship, praising our story of restitution and renewal. A wave of pride washed over me. Our collective vision was already taking root beyond legal documents. The day was consumed by presentations, climate-resilient landscape strategies for a corporate headquarters, plans for a new interactive botanical museum, and overseeing installation details for a client's seasonal flower exhibit. Each project reflected a commitment to sustainability that mirrored the ethos behind our scholarship. In the late afternoon, I boarded the train to Westchester. When I arrived, Celeste greeted me with a bright smile I hadn't seen in months. "We've got our first applicants," she announced, handing me a stack of thoughtfully written essays. "They're passionate about community gardens, urban farming. You have to read them." I sank into the sofa, reading stories of students determined to transform blighted neighborhoods into green havens. Each essay was a testament to hope and ingenuity, reminders of why our parents had dreamed of this scholarship. Celeste settled beside me. "We should meet them. Invite finalists to Westchester for an interview day. Showcase our parents' home and the garden we're planning." Her eyes sparkled with the same conviction I felt. "Let's do it." We spent the evening planning the interview day, campus tours, garden workshops, and a ceremony at the old oak tree in our backyard. We crafted schedules, arranged catering with local farms, and drafted invitations. Late that night, as I packed to return to the city, Celeste placed a hand on my shoulder. "Thank you for taking this on with me," she said. "You've given me purpose again." I nodded. "And you've reminded me that family can heal when we choose to nurture it." The train's headlights carved through the darkness as it carried me back to Manhattan, each rhythmic clack affirming that our shared story was not a closed chapter, but an ever-unfolding narrative of growth and grace. Winter had settled into New York, frosting the windowsills and turning the city's pulse into a hushed melody. I navigated the morning rush, latte in hand, my mind on the upcoming candidate interview day at the Westchester estate. The scholarship wasn't just abstract funding. It was about people, dreams, futures, and I was determined to honor that truth. The office was a flurry of updates. Clients wanted status reports on planting schedules before spring thaw, while architects discussed green roof integrations for a new residential complex. Yet every call felt grounded by the stories waiting in our inbox. Talented students eager to prove themselves. I wrapped up early and boarded the evening train north. Through the glass, streetlights blurred into glowing streaks, echoing the promise of what awaited. When I arrived at the estate, Celeste was setting up chairs in the grand foyer, historic portraits peering down at us. She paused as I walked in, relief flooding her features. "They'll be here at 10 a.m. tomorrow." I surveyed the space. Oak beams polished, paintings dusted, a long table in the parlor laid out with application portfolios and mugs of hot cocoa for our guests. We moved as a team, no need for words, only shared purpose. That night, sleep came in fits. I replayed interview questions in my mind. What inspired you to pursue environmental design? How do you envision impacting your community? Why do you deserve this scholarship? Each answer would reveal hearts behind the essays. At dawn, the candidates arrived. Awkward smiles, portfolios in hand, eyes bright with hope. I greeted them in the parlor, offering warm drinks and reassuring nods. The day unfolded like a tapestry of promise. Workshops in the garden, design critiques around the oak tree, personal interviews by the pond where swans glided. I was struck by their passion, students who had faced economic hardship, climate challenges, and yet dreamed of transforming their world. During a break, I found myself talking with Lana, a young woman whose sketchbook overflowed with greenhouse designs for urban rooftops. "I want to bring green spaces to neighborhoods where kids only know concrete," she told me. Her conviction reminded me why we'd fought so hard. Celeste joined me. Heard her story. "She's incredible," she whispered. "I think she'll make a difference." As the sun dipped low, we gathered around the fireplace to deliberate. Celeste led the discussion, referencing criteria we'd set. Names were called, decisions final. We presented checks to the selected winners, Lana among them, and watched tears of gratitude. Their parents hugged them, the estate hummed with joy. Later, as we walked back to the main house, Celeste nudged me. "Seeing them gives me hope. This scholarship is real, you were right." I smiled. Our parents would be proud. That night, alone in my city apartment, I penned a thank you letter to the scholarship committee, to mentors who had helped us launch the program, and to Claudia and David for their unwavering support. I realized that while money had been the spark, it was the human stories that fueled the fire. Trust rebuilt, purpose shared. This was the true inheritance, beyond dollars and deeds. I woke to the gentle patter of rain against my window, and the hush of a city stirring awake beneath a gray sky. Today would be a day of reflection, of balancing the weight of past wounds against the promise of our shared future. My schedule was mercifully free. No client meetings, no court dates, just time to think and plan. I brewed coffee and sat by the window, watching droplets race each other down the glass. Each drop followed its own path, yet all converged at the sill before streaming away. I found symbolism in that image. Celeste and I had diverged in our journey, but we now swirled together toward a common destiny. The phone buzzed. "Claudia." "Good morning," she said. "Your financials are stable, and the scholarship fund has a secure new investment portfolio. The returns look promising." I smiled. "Thank you. It's reassuring to know it's set up for long-term impact." She hesitated. "There's something else." I noticed a small discrepancy. A charge on one of the studio accounts under your name, but it doesn't appear to be yours. "It looks like someone used a forged version of your signature again. I think we should investigate." My heart sank. Just when I thought the tempest had calmed, a rogue wave threatened to pull me back into turmoil. I grabbed an umbrella and headed into the drizzle. At Myers & Caldwell, Claudia handed me a file containing a receipt for an art supply purchase. A large sum at a gallery downtown. It bore my forged signature, the same cursive flourish Celeste had used months ago. My pulse quickened. "I don't think Ms. Harrington initiated this," Claudia said, "but if she has enemies who know of her signature styles, they could exploit it." I nodded. "Let's add this to our reports, and notify the gallery. I want to put a stop to any further use." The day morphed into a whirlwind of phone calls, to the gallery manager, to David for legal advice, to my bank. Each conversation was a reminder that vigilance was never truly optional. By afternoon, I had formed a plan. Secure a digital signature service with multi-factor authentication, and alert our financial institutions to potential fraud. In the early evening, rain still falling, I boarded the train north to Westchester. I needed Celeste by my side for this. In her presence, I'd found not only sisterhood renewed, but a trusted ally. She met me at the station, coat pulled tight against the weather. I filled her in on the forgeries and our plans to safeguard the estate's assets. "We'll tackle this together," she said. "I'll reach out to the gallery on my end and let them know what to expect." Her determination steadied me. It was a bond stronger than any deception, a partnership forged in adversity and strengthened by shared purpose. That night, as thunder rumbled in the distance, we sat side by side in the study, drafting a comprehensive security protocol, digital signatures, account alerts, and a regular audit schedule. By candlelight, we worked in comfortable silence, knowing that our restored trust extended beyond restitution. It became a shield protecting our shared legacy. The following morning dawned a crisp, clear winter day, the sun glinting off snow-dusted branches lining the country road. I drove through the familiar landscape of Westchester, the air sharp and invigorating. Today, I had scheduled a team meeting at my Westchester home, inviting Claudia, David, and a cybersecurity expert I'd retained to review our new security protocols. It felt surreal to be hosting a strategic planning retreat here, a place that once held nothing but childhood memories of carefree days and sibling mischief. In the grand foyer, crystal chandeliers caught the morning light as I ushered my small team inside. Claudia carried a laptop, David a stack of legal briefs, and the security expert, Mark Lai, a compact black case filled with devices. "Thanks for coming," I began, leading them into the study. "Celeste and I have established our scholarship program, our restitution agreement is in place, and our assets are now frozen until we're satisfied with security upgrades. Now I want to make sure we never fall victim to fraud again." Mark set up his laptop and projector. "I've reviewed your current infrastructure. Today, we'll implement multi-factor authentication on all accounts, transition to encrypted digital signatures, and set up real-time fraud monitoring." He clicked through slides illustrating encryption protocols and alert workflows. David chimed in, "I'll file for any necessary compliance with financial regulations and draft amendments for our trust documents referencing the security measures." Claudia added, "And I'll coordinate with banks and galleries to ensure they're aware of our protocols and know to verify any exceptions directly with us." We worked through the morning, mapping out timelines, assigning responsibilities, and running test scenarios. With each completed task, the sense of vulnerability ebbed. At noon, I served soup and artisan bread in the dining room, where family portraits watched over us, now witness to a new kind of legacy, one of vigilance and partnership. After lunch, Celeste joined us, her presence a reminder of how far we'd come. She shared her own meeting with the gallery manager, who had agreed to implement hold protocols for large transactions. She also updated everyone on her therapy progress, noting how accountability had helped her grow. I watched her, the sister who had nearly destroyed my future, standing tall, engaged, committed. It felt like redemption at its purest, transformation through action. By late afternoon, our plan was finalized. I shook each person's hand and thanked them for their diligence. As the sun dipped, I stepped outside with Celeste. The first hints of dusk softened the snowy landscape. "Thank you for doing this," I said. "It means more than you know." She smiled, her breath visible in the cold air. "We're building something stronger than a family fortune. We're building trust." I nodded. "And that is priceless." In the quiet evening, I realized that the true inheritance from our parents wasn't the trust fund or the art collection. It was the values they instilled: resilience, stewardship, and above all, the belief that family could overcome its darkest moments with love and accountability. I awoke to a golden sunrise painting the Westchester treetops in honeyed tones. Overnight, the world had shed its frosty veil, and the estate seemed to breathe with promise. Today, Celeste and I would host the inaugural Scholarship Advisory Board meeting, a monumental step, ensuring our parents' legacy endured with integrity and expertise. By mid-morning, the grand parlor buzzed with conversation. Experts in environmental design, philanthropy, and university representatives took their seats around the ornate oak table. I looked at Celeste. Hers was a face of composed excitement, a far cry from the guilt and panic of months ago. I stood at the head of the table and welcomed the board. "Thank you for joining us. This scholarship is more than funds. It's a living bridge between our family's values and the next generation of environmental stewards." I invited each member to introduce themselves and share insights on governance and selection criteria. The dialogue was rich and forward-thinking. We debated the balance between academic merit and community impact, the ideal size of grants, and the benefits of mentorship partnerships. Celeste contributed thoughtfully, her voice imbued with both passion and humility. As the conversation unfolded, I felt the tangible weight of our parents' dreams transforming into concrete plans. By afternoon, we had formalized the advisory board charter, outlining roles, responsibilities, and decision-making protocols. I adjourned the meeting with a reflection. This board now stands as guardians of our shared future, steering these students toward meaningful impact. Polished nods and handshakes followed. After the board dispersed, Celeste and I walked the estate grounds together. The late winter air still carried a crisp edge, but the musk of earth hinted at spring's approach. I marveled at how our collaboration had flourished. What began as legal conflict had grown into visionary leadership, She paused by the edge of the koi pond. "Bia, I want to thank you," she said softly. "Not just for the scholarship or the security measures, but for believing I could change." Her reflection shimmered in the water, a testament to personal rebirth. I reached for her hand. "I saw who you could be, even when you couldn't see it yourself. Today's board is proof that trust can be rebuilt." Our reunion was interrupted by the distant chime of my phone. It was a journalist from a major magazine, requesting an interview about our story, from betrayal and restitution to legacy building. The opportunity felt daunting but vital. Our journey might inspire others grappling with family conflicts. We discussed the interview over dinner in the estate's dining room, candlelight flickering against silverware. Celeste voiced reservations about publicity, concerned it might reignite old wounds. I reassured her, "We can frame it as a story of accountability and rebirth, not scandal." She nodded, trusting my instincts. Later that evening, back in my city apartment, I drafted talking points. The importance of transparency in family trusts. Turning conflict into collaborative vision. Times empowering future environmental leaders. I fell asleep hopeful, aware that tomorrow our family story would reach beyond our walls. As I drifted off, I reflected on how far we'd come, from forged signatures and stolen funds, to forging a future that honored our parents' legacy and transcended our past pain. The early spring morning in Manhattan carried a crisp edge, as though the city itself held its breath in anticipation of our story reaching the world. I sat in my high-rise apartment, overlooking the skyline, reviewing the draft interview prepared for tomorrow's Leaders magazine. The article would chronicle our journey, from betrayal and near financial ruin to collaboration and legacy building. I felt a mixture of pride and vulnerability. Sharing our personal pain required courage, but the message of accountability and renewal outweighed my fears. By mid-morning, I met with the journalist, Elena Parker, in a quiet cafe near Bryant Park. We sat at a corner table, the hum of city life around us. She typed rapidly on her tablet as I recounted the events. My sister forged my signature on trust documents, nearly seizing a $500,000 inheritance. When the accountant, Claudia Myers, discovered discrepancies, she reached out to me first, and we initiated legal proceedings. Elena asked insightful questions, probing not just the facts but the emotions. "What did it feel like when you realized your own sister had betrayed you?" I paused, collecting my thoughts. It was like the ground disappeared beneath me, but it also awakened something fierce inside me, a determination to both protect myself and, if possible, salvage our relationship. We discussed mediation, the scholarship initiative, and the security measures we'd implemented. Elena seemed particularly moved by the scholarship's impact on students like Lana, whose dreams were now nurtured by our parents' legacy. After 2 hours, I left the cafe, feeling both exposed and empowered. Sharing our story could encourage others to address family conflicts head-on, rather than sweeping them under the rug. Back at the office, Claudia greeted me with news. "The feature is going live next week." I spoke with the magazine's editor. They want to include a sidebar on best practices for trust security. I smiled, grateful that our journey might help others. I asked Claudia to draft an outline for the sidebar. Regular audits of account activity. Use of encrypted digital signatures. Clear restitution agreements with enforceable terms. Incorporating joint philanthropic projects to rebuild trust. That afternoon, I took the subway to Westchester to finalize plans for the public launch event of the scholarship's first round. Celeste met me at the train, excitement lighting her eyes. "We have the park reserved," she said, "and the local university agreed to host a keynote speaker." I grinned. "Perfect. Let's make it a celebration." We spent the evening coordinating logistics, event permits, catering by a local farm-to-table caterer, and invitations to community leaders. As we worked, I felt the current of purpose flowing through us, our shared mission stronger than any legal document. As I returned to the city late that night, I reflected on what we had built. The magazine feature would share our story with thousands, and the launch event would showcase our parents' legacy in action. Betrayal had been the catalyst, but restitution and collaboration had transformed pain into purpose. I drifted to sleep anticipating the next chapter, the public celebration of hope, growth, and family resilience. The morning of the public launch dawned bright and clear, as though the weather itself blessed our journey. I stood at the edge of a newly refurbished park pavilion, heart pounding with anticipation. Behind me, the scholarship banner fluttered in a gentle breeze, emblazoned with our family crest. Community members, university officials, students, and press gathered around, creating a tapestry of eager faces. Claudia stood to my right, holding the program ribbon, and Celeste to my left, looking both proud and nervous. As the local mayor stepped up to the podium, I felt the weight of every step we'd taken. From forged documents and legal battles to restitution agreements and scholarships, our story had led us here, to a celebration of hope. The mayor welcomed us, praising the scholarship's potential to nurture tomorrow's environmental leaders. Then she gestured to me and Celeste. "It is my honor to invite the founders to open this scholarship program." She handed us golden scissors. Together, Celeste and I snipped the ribbon. Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. And for a moment, I closed my eyes and let the sound wash over me. This was more than symbolism. It was a testament to transformation. Students who'd applied approached us, shaking our hands and thanking us for believing in them. Lana, tears in her eyes, hugged me. "Thank you for this chance," she said. "I won't let you down." I smiled, remembering the long journey. "You'll make us proud." Later, at the reception, Celeste pulled me aside. "I've been offered a position on the scholarship board," she said. "I'd like to formally take on this role." I hugged her. "There's no one better." Quote, "As evening fell and lanterns lit the pavilion, I reflected on how this park, once an empty lot, had become a stage for our family's redemption. The inherited estate money had grown into something far richer: community impact, restored relationships, and a legacy of trust. In the days that followed, the magazine feature went live online, and messages poured in from people inspired by our story. I responded to each, sharing resources on trust management and conflict resolution. Each message reminded me that our personal battle had universal resonance. Betrayal can cut deep, but restitution, collaboration, and purpose can heal even the deepest wounds. As I prepared to return to my routine, clients, designs, board meetings, I carried with me a renewed sense of mission. The world had shifted beneath my feet, and I emerged not only as Bianca Harrington, the entrepreneur, but Bianca Harrington, the advocate, champion of integrity, restoration, and empowerment. A crisp spring breeze nudged open my apartment window, carrying the distant hum of traffic and the promise of renewal. It was Monday, and the world had shifted beneath my feet, but change, I reminded myself, was the very essence of growth. Armed with newfound conviction, I dove into a week brimming with client projects, board responsibilities, and personal milestones. By mid-morning, I was presenting final plans for a campus arboretum at a prestigious Ivy League university. As I traced pathways where native oaks would stand sentinel, my tablet buzzed with notifications, updates on scholarship fund performance, messages from scholarship recipients, and an email from tomorrow's leaders confirming the print run of our feature article. Each ping was a reminder that my life had become an intricate tapestry of design and advocacy. That afternoon, I slipped out of the office for a quick meeting at Greenwood High School, where I'd volunteered to judge a student greenhouse competition. The room buzzed with teenage energy. Seedlings sprouted in homemade terrariums. Hydroponic systems gleamed under fluorescent lights. I listened to presentations about sustainable food systems and urban farming with admiration, offering feedback and encouragement. One student's solar-powered irrigation prototype impressed me so much that I wired a microgrant from my firm's community fund to help scale her project. As the sun dipped low, I caught the train north. The rhythmic clack always soothed me, offering a bridge between my professional world and the quiet of Westchester nights. When I arrived, the estate's garden was a riot of tulips and daffodils, spring's colors in full bloom. Inside, Celeste greeted me holding a letter. "It came today," she said, voice trembling with excitement. The university selected Lana for a summer research grant thanks to our scholarship. Tears sparkled in her eyes. She'll be studying green roof efficiency in urban environments, exactly what she dreamed of. I embraced her, pride swelling. This is what it's all for. We spent the evening drafting a plan to expand the scholarship scope, adding funding for internships with environmental consultancies and nonprofits. The letter from Lana sat on the table, a handwritten note expressing gratitude and outlining her summer goals. Her handwriting was neat, hopeful, proof that our collective efforts were shaping real futures. Before I left, Celeste suggested we plant a commemorative tree in the garden, a young oak, to mark the scholarship's first anniversary. We dug a small hole beneath a blooming cherry blossom, gently placing the sapling in its new home. As we watered its roots, I felt the symbolic weight of our journey. From broken trusts to new beginnings, every root strengthening our bond. Back in the city, I prepared for a board meeting of the Landscape Architects Association, where I'd serve as a speaker on ethical estate planning and sustainable design. As I reviewed my notes, I realized how seamlessly my roles had blended: entrepreneur, advocate, sister, each facet reflecting the harmony we'd achieved. Late that night, I journaled by lamplight, reflecting on the threads that had woven our story: betrayal, restitution, collaboration, and legacy. And I allowed myself a rare indulgence, a sense of peace that came from doing what mattered most, honoring the past while cultivating the future. The first light of dawn transformed the city skyline into a watercolor of gold and rose. I stood at my apartment window, breathing in the calm before another day of balancing two worlds: the thriving business in Manhattan and the legacy-building work in Westchester. Today, I had back-to-back commitments. First, a board meeting at the Landscape Architects Association, then an evening gala hosted by Tomorrow's Leaders magazine to celebrate the feature article launch. Downstairs, my phone buzzed with a message from Celeste. "Don't forget our call at 2, scholarship board follow-up." I smiled, grateful for her consistency. In the past, that reminder might have slipped through my busy schedule, but now, our collaboration was seamless. At the association's headquarters, I led a discussion on ethical stewardship of family funds and landscape projects. I shared anecdotes from our own journey, how transparency and purpose can transform conflict into collaboration. Colleagues nodded, taking notes, and I felt that our story was resonating beyond our immediate circle. By mid-afternoon, I was back in my office, reviewing design renderings for a waterfront park renovation. Between meetings, I dialed into the scholarship board call. Members updated me on grant disbursements and outreach efforts to underserved communities. Celeste reported that applications had increased by 30% since the launch event. We strategized on expanding mentorship workshops, inviting professionals to guide students in real-world projects. As evening approached, I changed into evening attire and headed to the glittering event at the Metropolitan Club. Warm greetings, champagne flutes, and clusters of influential donors filled the grand ballroom. Elena Parker, the journalist, found me first. "Bianca, your story has sparked so many conversations about family philanthropy," she said, her eyes bright. "We'll have a follow-up piece soon." I thanked her and moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations. But amid the applause, my mind touched the quiet moments back home: the sapling oak growing in Westchester, the students' handwritten thank you notes, and the late-night planning sessions with Celeste. These were the true celebrations of our triumph. Midway through the gala, I spotted Celeste across the room. Her radiant smile met mine, and we shared a silent salute before weaving through the crowd together. "Look at this turnout," she said, her voice soft over the din. "I never imagined we'd get this far." I squeezed her hand. "We created something lasting together." Later, as the gala wound down, I delivered a brief speech to the assembly. "Thank you for believing in our vision." What began as a painful rift became a catalyst for positive change, proof that with accountability and collaboration, family legacies can blossom into community legacies. I look forward to partnering with all of you as we support the next generation of designers and environmental stewards. Applause filled the hall, and I felt a swell of conviction. Our story had come full circle, from ripped trust documents to ribbon-cutting ceremonies, from solitary battles to shared triumphs. On the ride home, the city lights blurred, and I reflected on the path ahead. There were new projects waiting, more students to support, and countless lives to touch. Yet amid all the plans and commitments, I carried a quiet certainty that the bond between Celeste and me, once shattered, had been reforged into something unbreakable. Spring had fully unfurled, and Manhattan's streets pulsed with life as I navigated to my studio for a morning design review. The windows were thrown open, letting in the scent of jasmine and the distant honk of yellow cabs. With each breath, I felt a surge of gratitude for the path I'd walked, one defined by rupture and renewal. By mid-morning, I was on a video call with campus officials at the architectural program I'd advised. Their plans for integrating native plant corridors throughout the campus were ambitious, and I provided feedback on soil selection and seasonal bloom cycles. While speaking, my phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. Board meeting summary attached. Everything is on track. I smiled, the synergy between us seamless. The afternoon brought an invitation to speak at a symposium on philanthropic trust structures. As I prepared my keynote, I reflected on how traditional family funds often stagnated without active purpose. I planned to share our journey, how intertwining legal safeguards with shared vision transformed a contested inheritance into a living legacy. At the symposium, I stepped onto the stage to applause, scanning the audience of legal experts, nonprofit leaders, and design professionals. I began. Good afternoon. Imagine a family trust fractured by deception. When betrayal strips away more than money, it severs the ties that bind. Now imagine that those same ties, when reforged with accountability and shared purpose, can weave a community tapestry that uplifts hundreds of young leaders. I outlined the milestones, the discovery of forgery, the legal safeguards, the mediation that birthed restitution and the scholarship, and the ongoing collaboration that guided our shared philanthropy. The audience listened intently, many nodding at the power of integrating emotional intelligence with legal structures. After the Quande, colleagues approached with hands outstretched, seeking advice and sharing their own stories of family foundations gone awry. I realized that our private struggle had become a public beacon for best practices. That evening, I met Celeste at a community center in Brooklyn, where we volunteered for a youth urban gardening program. We taught students how to tend seedlings, explaining the symbolism of roots and growth. Seeing their eager faces reminded me that every sapling we planted, literal or metaphorical, held the potential to change a life. As dusk fell, Celeste turned to me. I never imagined I'd find purpose in partnership with you, but here we are. Her tone was reflective, warm. I squeezed her shoulder. This journey has been unexpected in so many ways, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. She smiled, and for a moment the world felt wholly at peace. Later, alone in my apartment, I drafted a letter to the scholarship recipients, encouraging them to remain engaged with the program and to pay it forward. I closed with a quote from our mother's favorite poet. What we build with love endures beyond our own time. As night enveloped the city, I sat by the window, gazing at the stars. Tomorrow would bring the final chapter of our story, yet I knew that the true narrative would continue to unfold in every student empowered, every garden restored, and every bond healed. The final December sunrise of the year painted the sky with hues of rose and gold as I stepped onto the balcony of my Manhattan apartment, overlooking the river that wound its way through the city like a silver thread. Each breath of crisp winter air was a reminder of how far we had traveled, both geographically and emotionally, from that fateful day when Celeste's forged signature nearly stole my future. I sipped my coffee slowly, reflecting on the long journey. From legal confrontations in high-rise offices and tense mediation sessions, to planting saplings in our parents' garden and launching a scholarship that had already changed dozens of lives, every milestone had shaped me. Yet it was not the victories in court or the accolades in the press that defined this story. It was the restoration of a bond I thought irreparably broken. Today marked the one-year anniversary of that first call from Claudia that shattered my assumptions of family loyalty. Over the past year, I had rebuilt my trust in Celeste, step by painful step, and she had shown unwavering commitment to restitution and growth. At 10 o'clock, I joined her in Westchester for a final celebration at the estate, a gathering of everyone who had been part of our saga, Claudia, David, Mark Lee, members of the Scholarship Advisory Board, and the first cohort of scholarship recipients, now interns at reputable environmental organizations. The estate's grand hall was adorned with garlands of holly and wreaths of evergreen, echoing the season's spirit of renewal. A long table groaned under the weight of hearty fare, roast vegetables, spiced cider, and the festive desserts of our mother's recipes. Claudia poured tea from a porcelain pot, her calm presence as steady as ever. David stood by the hearth, sharing a quiet laugh with board member Dr. Mitchell, who had helped shape the scholarship's governance. Mark Lee displayed the new security dashboard on a large screen, proudly showing 0 attempted fraud incidents in 6 months. I found Celeste near the fireplace, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. Her eyes met mine, and in that moment, words were unnecessary. We had traversed a labyrinth of pain and emerged stronger together. Guests took their seats, and I stood to offer a toast. To trust reclaimed, to legacies honored, and to future generations whose lives we have touched. May this be the first of many anniversaries where we celebrate not only family bonds but community impact. The clink of cups echoed my gratitude. We spent the afternoon exchanging stories, recalling late-night strategy sessions, the tense face-off in the mediation room, the exhilaration of the scholarship launch, and the empowerment we witnessed in students like Lana and the glow of hope in their eyes. As dusk settled, I guided everyone outside to the garden. There, under a pergola draped in fairy lights, stood the oak sapling we had planted the previous spring. Its slender trunk was now sturdy, and its branches reached skyward, a living metaphor for our journey. Together, we gathered around, and Celeste placed a small brass plaque at its base. In honor of resilience, restitution, and renewal, the Harrington Environmental Scholarship, 2024. We took turns placing handwritten messages in weatherproof tubes around the sapling's roots, a time capsule for future caretakers. Later, as the last guest departed and the lights dimmed, Celeste and I remained alone in the garden. Snowflakes drifted down, each landing softly on the oak's branches. "We did it," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. I nodded, feeling the final piece click into place. "We did." We embraced beneath the twinkling lights, the crisp air swirling around us in a gentle dance. The path ahead would hold new challenges, new projects, and undoubtedly new stories to tell. But we had proven that even the deepest wounds could heal when met with accountability, empathy, and shared purpose. As I stepped back into the warmth of my apartment later that night, I gazed at the city lights and allowed myself a moment of quiet triumph. I was no longer defined by betrayal, but by the choice to forge a future greater than my fears. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.